Commander Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the blue planet below. In his 40 years of service, he had seen hundreds of worlds surrender. This one would be no different. Earth, they called it. A small, insignificant rock in an unremarkable corner of the galaxy. The Valdrine Empire had ruled the stars for 3,000 years. They were the apex predators of space, 8 feet tall with armored skin that could stop most weapons. Their ships were the fastest and strongest in the galaxy. Their soldiers never knew defeat. Hyunwoo himself had conquered 23 worlds. He wore their names on his chest like badges of honor. Admiral Tae-jin had assigned this mission to him personally. It was supposed to be simple. Show up, make demands, watch them surrender. Take what resources the planet had. Move on to the next target. The Valdrine had done this 847 times before. Earth would be 848. The initial scans of Earth showed nothing impressive. The humans had primitive rockets that barely left their atmosphere. They had weapons, yes, but nothing that could threaten a Valdrine warship. Their planet was divided into hundreds of separate nations, all fighting each other over meaningless things like borders and resources. They had no unified defense. No planetary government, no chance. Captain Ji-won reviewed the data on her screen. She was the science officer aboard the research vessel Silent Dawn. Her job was to study new species before conquest. She found humans fascinating in a disturbing way. Every nation on Earth maintained a standing army. Every single one. Even the small nations had weapons. Even the peaceful ones stockpiled bombs. She scrolled through human entertainment broadcasts, movies about alien invasions, books about world wars, games about survival and combat. The humans seemed obsessed with fighting. They had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. 5,000 years of nearly constant warfare. Ji-won wrote in her report that humans might be more dangerous than they appeared. She noted their extensive military infrastructure. She pointed out that they had built weapons capable of destroying their own planet multiple times over. She highlighted that despite never meeting aliens, they had prepared for the possibility. Her report was filed and ignored. Admiral Tae-jin barely glanced at it. He had read similar reports about other species. Primitive worlds often armed themselves out of fear. It never mattered. The Valdrine always won. The conquest fleet took position in orbit around Earth. 200 warships, each capable of destroying a continent. The message was broadcast in every human language. The translation systems made it simple and clear. Surrender in 72 hours or face complete annihilation. Submit to Valdrine rule. Resistance would mean death. Hyunwoo expected panic. He expected desperate transmissions begging for mercy. He expected leaders fighting each other over who would surrender first. That was how it always went. Fear broke species faster than weapons. Instead, Earth went silent. No communications, no responses, no pleas for negotiation. The only change was that every major city on the planet went dark simultaneously. Power grids shut down. Broadcasting stopped. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath. The Valdrine command staff analyzed this behavior. Some thought it meant the humans were preparing to surrender. Others believed they were in shock. Hyunwoo thought they were just frightened. He had seen this before on other worlds. The silence before submission. He was wrong. On Earth's surface in a bunker deep beneath the Korean peninsula, Commander Do-hyun coordinated with military leaders from every nation. The United Earth Defense Force had been formed in secret over the past 50 years. Every nation had contributed. Every nation had prepared. Humanity had watched the stars and wondered when someone would come. Now they had their answer. The plan was simple but required perfect timing. Every railgun platform, every missile battery, every defense station had to fire at exactly the same moment. The power grids were shut down to hide energy signatures. The satellites were repositioned to optimal firing angles. Every ship in orbit, every station, every piece of human technology was being prepared for one devastating first strike. Colonel Yoonji watched the countdown on her screen. She commanded the Pacific Alliance Defense Network. Beside her, officers from 50 nations waited for the signal. They spoke different languages. They came from different cultures. They had different beliefs. But right now, they all wanted the same thing: to make the invaders bleed. The 72 hours expired. Hyunwoo gave the order to begin orbital bombardment. It was standard procedure: destroy a few military bases, show overwhelming power, break their spirit. The Valdrine had refined this technique over 3 millennia. It always worked. The Fourth Fleet moved into attack position. Gun ports opened, targeting systems locked on. Hyunwoo was about to give the fire command when his sensor officer shouted a warning: energy spikes all over the planet. Thousands of them. What were the humans doing? Then Earth's hidden defenses opened fire. Railguns that had been concealed under mountains and oceans launched solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Missiles poured from underground silos. Laser platforms on the moon activated. Asteroid bases that the Valdrine had assumed were mining operations revealed themselves as weapons platforms. The volume of fire was insane. Hyunwoo had never seen anything like it. His shields held, but barely. The humans were targeting weak points with surgical precision. They knew exactly where to hit: shield generators, engine manifolds, sensor arrays. Every shot was calculated to cause maximum damage. The first Valdrine warship exploded in a ball of fire. Then another. Then 5 more. Alarms screamed across the fleet. Ships began evasive maneuvers, but the human weapons tracked them perfectly. Civilian satellites suddenly activated and began moving, creating a debris field that disrupted Valdrine targeting systems. Captain Jiwon watched in horror from a safe distance. The humans were weaponizing everything. Space stations vented atmosphere to create thrust and rammed into Valdrine ships. Supply vessels packed with explosives flew suicide runs. Even the ancient satellites from early space exploration were being directed into collision courses. In the first 10 minutes of combat, 23 Valdrine warships were destroyed. 23. No species had ever destroyed a single Valdrine warship in an opening engagement. The humans had killed 23. Hyunwoo ordered a retreat. His pride screamed against it, but his tactical training took over. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. The humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They were supposed to be afraid. Instead, they were angry. As the Valdrine fleet pulled back, Hyunwoo watched his sensors. The humans were not celebrating. They were reloading. Already damaged weapons platforms were being repaired. New satellites were being launched. The humans were preparing for round 2. On Earth, Commander Do-hyun allowed himself a small smile. The aliens had expected an easy victory. They had expected fear. They had expected submission. Instead, humanity had given them something they had never experienced in 3,000 years of conquest. Humanity had given them a fight. The message went out to every nation on Earth. The battle had just begun. The invaders could be hurt. They could be killed. And humanity had spent 5,000 years learning how to kill things that wanted to kill them. The Valdrine had picked the wrong species to underestimate. In orbit, Hyunwoo looked at the casualty reports and felt something he had never felt before. Something cold and unfamiliar. He felt afraid. The emergency meeting on Valdrine Prime was tense. Admiral Taejin sat at the head of the War Council, his face showing no emotion. But inside he was confused. The initial reports from Commander Hyunwoo made no sense. 23 ships lost, 67 damaged, against a primitive species that barely had spaceflight. The council members argued among themselves. Some said Hyunwoo had been careless. Others claimed the reports were exaggerated. A few suggested that perhaps Earth was not as primitive as the scans indicated. Admiral Taejin silenced them all with a gesture. He authorized reinforcements. The Second Fleet would join Hyunwoo. 150 more warships. Surely that would be enough. The humans had gotten lucky once. They would not get lucky twice. The Valdrine had conquered 847 worlds. Earth would fall like all the others. Flight Commander Kang Yoon led his fighter squadron toward Earth's atmosphere. He had trained for 30 years. He had flown in 100 battles. The human fighters that rose to meet him looked slow and clumsy. Their design was inefficient. Their weapons were primitive. This would be easy. The first human fighter that attacked him flew in a way that should have killed the pilot, a turn so sharp that the gravity forces should have crushed a human body. But the fighter completed the maneuver and fired. Kang Hyun dodged barely. What kind of pilot could survive that? More human fighters swarmed around his squadron. They flew like they were insane. Diving attacks that brought them within meters of collision, rolls and spins that put impossible stress on their machines. One damaged human fighter simply rammed itself into a Valdrine ship, destroying both. Kang Hyun lost 18 fighters in the first engagement. 18. He had never lost more than 2 in any previous battle. He ordered a retreat, something he had never done before in his career. As his squadron pulled back, he saw more human fighters launching from the surface. They were not running out. They just kept coming. On Earth's surface, Colonel Yoonji coordinated the defense of the Pacific region. Her screen showed Valdrine troops landing in multiple locations. They were trying to take out the railgun platforms directly. She had expected this. The humans had prepared for ground combat too. The Valdrine soldiers were big and strong. Their armor could stop most bullets. They moved in tight formations using overwhelming firepower to crush resistance. It was a tactic that had worked on hundreds of worlds. But those other worlds had never fought a ground war like humans had. The Valdrine landed in what looked like an empty valley in Korea. Perfect terrain for their heavy vehicles. They advanced confidently. Then the valley exploded. Mines that had been placed months ago detonated in a chain reaction. Artillery hidden in the mountains opened fire. Infantry in concealed positions attacked from every direction. The Valdrine had superior armor and weapons, but the humans had superior tactics. They used the terrain. They set traps. They attacked and faded away before the Valdrine could respond. Every battle cost the Valdrine more soldiers than they could afford to lose. Commander Hyunwoo led a ground assault on Seoul. His forces outnumbered the human defenders 10-1. The city should have fallen in days. Instead, it became a nightmare. The humans had turned every building into a fortress. Every street was filled with obstacles and explosives. Every corner hid soldiers ready to ambush. The Valdrine were used to fighting in open space or on planets with simple defenses. Urban warfare was something they had never mastered because they had never needed to. The humans had been perfecting it for centuries. Block by block, building by building, room by room, the humans made the Valdrine pay in blood for every meter of ground. After 2 weeks of fighting, Hyunwoo's forces had captured 3 city blocks. 3 blocks out of hundreds. His casualty rate was 30%. At this rate, his entire force would be destroyed before they took the city. He had never experienced anything like this. Captain Jiwon studied the tactical data from her research vessel. She was beginning to understand what made humans so dangerous. It was not their technology. It was not their weapons. It was their mindset. Every other species in the galaxy fought to win quickly and with minimal casualties. Humans fought to win eventually, no matter what it cost. She found records of human history, wars that lasted years, battles that killed millions, cities destroyed and rebuilt multiple times, and through it all, humans never stopped fighting. They had a saying that kept appearing in their military documents. Never surrender, never give up, death before defeat. The Valdrine fought for glory and conquest. Humans fought for survival, and something about being threatened with extinction made them absolutely terrifying. The Second Fleet arrived and joined the battle. 350 Valdrine warships now surrounded Earth. Admiral Taejin was confident this would end the resistance. No single planet could stand against this much firepower, but Earth was not a normal planet. Hidden shipyards on the dark side of the moon had been working non-stop since the invasion began. Human engineers were reverse engineering captured Valdrine technology and combining it with human weapons. The results were crude but effective. Admiral Seojin commanded the newly formed Earth Defense Fleet. 30 warships built in secret over the past decade, now upgraded with stolen Valdrine shield technology. He knew his fleet was outnumbered 10-1. He did not care. The Valdrine expected humans to fight defensively. Seojin planned to attack. The Earth fleet launched from the moon base and immediately went on the offensive. The Valdrine were shocked. The humans were supposed to be defending their planet. Instead, they were charging straight at the Valdrine fleet. It made no tactical sense, but it worked. The human ships used kamikaze drones as shields while closing distance. They targeted individual Valdrine ships with concentrated fire, destroying them before moving to the next target. The Valdrine fleet was larger, but the humans fought with a coordination and aggression that the Valdrine could not match. Research Director Yuna worked in a secret facility buried deep in the Himalayan mountains. Her team had been given one job: study Valdrine technology and find its weaknesses. They had been working for 18 hours a day since the invasion started. Now they had results. Valdrine shields operated on a specific frequency. If you hit that frequency with the right kind of pulse, the shields would collapse for a fraction of a second. It was a tiny window, but it was enough. Yuna sent the data to every human military unit. Within hours, human weapons were being modified to exploit this weakness. The battle in orbit turned. Valdrine ships that had seemed invincible suddenly found their shields failing at critical moments. Human railgun rounds punched through armor. Missiles found their targets. One by one, Valdrine warships died. Commander Hyunwoo received the order to retreat from Seoul. His ground forces were being withdrawn to defensive positions. The invasion was being called off. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Valdrine Empire was retreating from a battle they had started. On the bridge of his damaged flagship, Hyunwoo looked at the blue planet below. The humans had lost millions. Their cities were damaged. Their infrastructure was in ruins. But they had not surrendered. They had not broken. Instead, they had learned and adapted. In just weeks of combat, they had gone from being prey to being predators. Admiral Tajan recalled all Valdrine forces to defensive positions around their core systems. The war was not over, but the easy conquest had become a nightmare. The humans had done something no other species had ever done. They had made the Valdrine afraid, and fear, Hyunwoo realized, was something his people had no experience dealing with. For 3,000 years, they had been the ones causing fear. Now they were the ones feeling it. The humans had struck back, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. 6 months had passed since the invasion began. Admiral Tajan stood in his command center on Valdrine Prime, staring at casualty reports that should not exist. 12 fleets committed, nearly half the entire Valdrine military, and they controlled only 3 human cities. 3. The numbers were impossible. The Valdrine had lost more soldiers fighting humanity than in the previous 1,000 years of conquest combined. Supply lines were stretched thin. Ships needed repairs they could not get. And worst of all, morale was collapsing. Valdrine soldiers were afraid. That word had not been used in military reports for 3 millennia. Captain Jiwon had been promoted to intelligence director. She spent her days studying everything about humanity. She watched their old broadcasts. She read their history. She analyzed their psychology. What she found terrified her more than any weapon. Humanity had a concept they called total war. When threatened, they would sacrifice everything to survive. They would burn their own cities rather than let enemies have them. They would fight with broken weapons and empty stomachs. They would lose 1 million soldiers and send 1 million more. Because to humans, some things were worth any price. The Valdrine fought to expand their empire. Humans fought because they refused to be conquered. There was a difference between fighting for glory and fighting for survival. A difference the Valdrine were learning too late. Lieutenant Nari worked as a cultural analyst. She studied human languages and found something disturbing. Humans had hundreds of words for different types of warfare. Siege, guerrilla, attrition, blitzkrieg. Each word represented a different way to kill enemies. Each concept was refined over thousands of years of practice. The Valdrine had one way to fight. Overwhelming force applied quickly. Humans had 1,000 ways to fight, and they were using all of them. They adapted to every Valdrine tactic within days. Every strategy the Valdrine tried, humans found a counter. It was like fighting an enemy that could read minds. General Sora commanded the defense of Tokyo. The Valdrine had attacked the city 6 times. 6 times they had been pushed back. The city was half destroyed. Millions of civilians had died. Food was running low. Medical supplies were almost gone. Any other species would have surrendered. Instead, Sora's forces had used the rubble to create better defenses. They had learned Valdrine tactics and developed counters. They had captured enemy weapons and ammunition. Every attack made them stronger. Every battle taught them something new. The Valdrine were not fighting a city anymore. They were fighting a fortress that learned. Commander Hyunwoo led another assault on a human position. His orders were to capture a bunker complex beneath the ruins of Seoul. His forces outnumbered the defenders 10-1. They had superior weapons and armor. The battle should take hours. It took 17 days. The humans defended every tunnel, every room, every corridor. They used traps and ambushes. They collapsed tunnels behind them. They fought until they ran out of ammunition, then used Valdrine weapons taken from dead soldiers. When they finally retreated, they blew up the entire complex, burying 200 Valdrine troops in the rubble. Hyunwoo sat in the ruins and had a horrible realization. The humans had never intended to hold the bunker. The entire battle was designed to kill as many Valdrine as possible, while human engineers studied their tactics. Every engagement was a lesson. Every defeat was data they could use. The Valdrine fought each battle to win it. Humans fought each battle to learn from it. Even when they lost, they gained something valuable: experience, knowledge, understanding of their enemy. And that knowledge was being shared across their entire military in real time. Research Director Yuna's team had achieved breakthrough after breakthrough. They had not just matched Valdrine shield technology, but improved it. Human computer systems, originally designed for code breaking and cyber warfare, proved superior for tactical analysis. Human metallurgy techniques created armor that was lighter, but stronger than Valdrine designs. Every piece of Valdrine technology that humans captured was studied, reverse-engineered, and improved within weeks. The technology gap that had given the Valdrine such an advantage was closing rapidly. Soon it would be gone entirely. The turning point came at the Battle of the Asteroid Belt. Fleet Admiral Seojin commanded a human fleet of 80 newly constructed warships. They had been built in hidden shipyards throughout the solar system. Each ship combined the best of human and Valdrine technology. Human tactical computers with Valdrine weapons, human armor with Valdrine engines. The Valdrine 7th Fleet entered the asteroid belt expecting to hunt down human supply ships. Instead, they found Seojin waiting for them. The human admiral had done something the Valdrine had never seen. He had studied their psychology. Valdrine commanders were aggressive. They always advanced. They never retreated unless forced. Seojin used this against them. His fleet appeared to panic and run. The Valdrine pursued exactly as Seojin knew they would. They chased the human ships deeper into the asteroid belt. Then the trap closed. Human ships hidden among the asteroids activated. A minefield of nuclear devices detonated in a chain reaction. Railgun platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment opened fire. The Valdrine fleet was caught in a crossfire with nowhere to run. Seojin's fleet turned and attacked from the rear. The Valdrine 7th Fleet was surrounded, outmaneuvered, and destroyed. Only 23 ships escaped. 207 were lost. It was the worst defeat in Valdrine history. Admiral Taejin received the report and felt something break inside him. The 7th Fleet had been his finest. Its commander had been his most trusted officer. And the humans had destroyed it using tactics the Valdrine had never imagined. Tactics based on deception, patience, and understanding of enemy psychology. For the first time in his long career, Taejin considered the possibility that the Valdrine might lose this war. Not because they were weaker, not because they had fewer resources, but because they were fighting an enemy that learned faster than they could adapt. Captain Hana commanded the UES Retribution, humanity's first faster-than-light warship. It was built using a Valdrine FTL drive that had been captured and reverse-engineered. Her crew included 50 Valdrine prisoners who had chosen to defect. The Valdrine had no concept of prisoners having rights. Captured enemies were killed or enslaved. But humans treated prisoners according to something they called the Geneva Conventions. Prisoners received food, medical care, and protection. They were not tortured. They were not executed. This confused the Valdrine prisoners at first. Then it converted them. A soldier named Minho had been captured defending Seoul. He expected to be killed. Instead, humans gave him medical treatment for his injuries. They asked him questions but did not hurt him. They treated him like a person, not a thing. When given the choice to help humanity or sit in a cell, Minho chose to help. So did 49 others. They taught humans about Valdrine culture, tactics, and technology. They helped crack Valdrine codes. Some even volunteered to fight alongside human forces against their own people. This was psychological warfare, on a level the Valdrine had never imagined. How do you fight an enemy that turns your own soldiers against you through kindness? The Retribution led a fleet of 50 human warships to Kelvara Prime, a Valdrine agricultural world. Instead of destroying it, Admiral Do-hyun disabled the orbital defenses and broadcast a message to the population. Any civilians who wanted peace would be protected under human law. Any who fought would be treated as enemy combatants. It was a choice the Valdrine never gave conquered peoples. Surrender or die. But humans offered something more dangerous, the option to switch sides, to join the winners instead of dying with the losers. Thousands of Valdrine civilians took the offer. They did not want to die for an empire that was losing. They had families. They had lives. Why should they suffer because their leaders had picked a fight with the wrong species? The defections began slowly, then accelerated. Valdrine soldiers surrendered instead of fighting to the death. Colonies declared neutrality. Some even asked for human protection. The empire was not just losing battles. It was falling apart. Admiral Taejin called for an emergency council meeting. Some members demanded they use antimatter weapons to glass Earth. Others suggested diplomacy. Everyone was talking at once. The council was in chaos. Captain Ji-won spoke into the noise. She had studied human history extensively now. She understood them better than anyone. Using weapons of mass destruction would not break humanity. It would unite them. It would make them even more dangerous. The only way to end this war was to admit defeat. The council fell silent. No one wanted to hear it, but everyone knew it was true. The Valdrine Empire, undefeated for 3,000 years, was going to lose to a single planet of primitive apes who refused to know their place. The empire that had conquered 847 worlds was about to surrender to world 848. And the humans had done it not with superior technology or numbers, but with superior adaptability and an absolute refusal to quit. Commander Hyunwoo received orders to fall back to defensive positions around the Valdrine home systems. The war was being lost. After 6 months of fighting, the humans had not just survived, they had won. And the galaxy would never forget that the apex predators had been beaten by the prey. The war entered its second year. The Valdrine had pulled all their forces back to defensive positions around their core worlds. They believed humans limited to one star system could not mount an effective offensive. They believed wrong. Captain Hana stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as it jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind her, 49 more human warships made the same jump. Destination, Kelvara Prime. Mission, Liberation. The Valdrine had abandoned the agricultural world 6 months ago. They needed every ship to defend more important systems, but Kelvara still had 30 million Valdrine civilians. They expected to be killed when humanity arrived. That was what conquerors did. That was what the Valdrine would have done. The human fleet entered orbit and broadcast a message. All civilians would be protected. Anyone who wanted to leave could board transport ships. Anyone who wanted to stay would be safe under human protection. Food and medical supplies were being sent down immediately. No one would be harmed. The Valdrine civilians did not believe it at first. It had to be a trick. But then the supply ships landed. Human soldiers distributed food and medicine. They set up medical stations. They repaired water treatment facilities. They acted like protectors. Within a week, Kelvara Prime was producing food again. But now it was sending supplies to Earth, not to the Valdrine Empire. The civilians were not prisoners. They were citizens of a new order. One where conquered peoples had rights. Where occupiers helped instead of taking. News of Kelvara spread through Valdrine space. Other colonies began sending secret messages to human forces. They wanted the same deal. Protection instead of destruction. Peace instead of war. The Valdrine Empire was not just losing territory. It was losing the loyalty of its own people. On Valdrine Prime, Admiral Taejin faced a crisis that military force could not solve. The War Council demanded action. Some wanted to send assassins to kill human leaders. Others wanted to deploy biological weapons. The most extreme voices called for antimatter strikes that would destroy entire human cities. Taejin refused all of it. Captain Ji-won had convinced him of one terrible truth. Humanity did not have a single point of failure. Kill one leader, 10 more would rise. Destroy one city, the others would fight harder. Use weapons of mass destruction, and humanity would respond with their own. Earth had enough nuclear weapons to make Valdrine Prime uninhabitable, and the humans were crazy enough to use them. The Valdrine had built an empire on fear and strength. Humans had shown that courage and adaptability were stronger than both. Now the empire was crumbling, and there was no military solution that would save it. Commander Kang Yun sat in a cell on Earth. He had been captured 6 months ago during a special operations mission. His team had been sent to sabotage human weapons factories. They had been caught within 48 hours, not by military forces but by civilian intelligence agencies. Earth had 17 different intelligence services. They competed with each other constantly, but when it came to alien infiltrators, they all shared information instantly. Kang Yoon had been trained to resist torture. He was prepared for pain. What he was not prepared for was intelligence officer Minji. She brought him food. Real food, not prison rations. She asked him about his family, his home, his life before the war. She treated him like a person. She was curious about his culture, his beliefs, his perspective. She did not threaten. She did not hurt. She just talked. After 2 months, Kang Yoon told her everything. Not because he was broken, but because she made him want to talk. She made him realize that the Valdrine way was not the only way. That strength did not have to mean cruelty. That winning did not have to mean destroying. He defected officially, becoming the highest-ranking Valdrine to switch sides. He appeared on broadcasts explaining why he had changed allegiances. He told his people that humanity offered something the Empire never had: choice, freedom, the right to decide their own future. More defections followed. Valdrine soldiers who were tired of fighting a war they did not believe in. Officers who saw no honor in dying for a lost cause. Civilians who wanted peace more than they wanted victory. Research Director Yuna made another breakthrough. Her team had developed faster-than-light communication using quantum entanglement. The Valdrine had never developed it because they ruled through intimidation, not communication. Their messages were orders, not conversations. Human FTL communication changed everything. Every human ship could coordinate with every other ship instantly. Across light years, human forces could share tactical data in real time. The Valdrine, still using conventional FTL communication with minutes to hours of delay, found themselves outmaneuvered constantly. Human fleets began appearing in Valdrine space with increasing frequency. Small raids at first, hit-and-run attacks on supply convoys, then larger operations. Human forces would jump in, destroy military targets, and jump out before reinforcements arrived. The Valdrine could not catch them, could not predict them, could not stop them. General Sora led the ground assault on Terravan, a Valdrine industrial world. Her forces landed expecting heavy resistance. Instead, they found the factories already shut down. The workers had gone on strike. They refused to build weapons for a war they no longer believed in. Sora's troops secured the planet without firing a shot. The Valdrine garrison surrendered rather than fight. The civilians cheered, not for humanity but for peace, for an end to war, for a future that did not involve dying for an empire that no longer cared about them. Admiral Tajan watched his empire collapse piece by piece. Colonies declaring independence, fleets surrendering without battle, civilians choosing human protection over Valdrine rule. Everything his people had built over 3,000 years was falling apart in less than 2. The final blow came when the human fleet surrounded Valdrine Prime. 300 warships. Built in less than 2 years, each one a testament to human industrial capacity and determination. Admiral Seojin commanded the fleet from his flagship. He broadcast a message that the entire Valdrine homeworld could hear. We do not want your extinction. We want your surrender. We want peace. Choose. It was a concept that broke the Valdrine psychologically more than any weapon could. They were the apex predators. They had conquered 847 worlds. They had never known defeat. And now they were being offered mercy by the species they had tried to wipe out. Some Valdrine commanders wanted to fight to the death. Better to die than to surrender. But Admiral Tajan knew better. He had studied the humans enough to understand. They would accept surrender. They would allow the Valdrine to survive. But if forced to fight, they would burn Valdrine Prime to ashes and not lose a moment of sleep over it. Humanity had proven they could be cruel when necessary. Earth's history was full of examples. Destroyed cities, scorched earth, total war. But they had also proven they could be merciful. Prisoners treated well, enemies given second chances. Defeated foes helped to rebuild. The choice was simple: die fighting or live with dignity. Tajin made the only logical choice. He contacted Admiral Seojin and requested a meeting to discuss terms of surrender. Lieutenant Nari was assigned as translator and cultural liaison for the peace talks. She traveled to the neutral station where human and Valdrine leaders would meet. She had studied both species extensively. She understood both languages. But could she bridge the gap between two peoples who had been killing each other for 2 years? The meeting room was carefully designed. Neutral colors, equal seating, symbols from both cultures displayed with equal prominence. Every detail calculated to show mutual respect. This was not a conqueror dictating terms. This was two civilizations trying to find a way forward. Admiral Tajin entered first. He was old, tired, and defeated, but he held his head high. He had lost the war, but he would not lose his dignity. Admiral Seojin entered next. Younger, confident, victorious, but not arrogant. Not cruel, just professional. They sat across from each other. Two admirals, two warriors, two species that had tried to destroy each other. And now they had to find peace. The negotiations would take weeks. The terms would be complex. But both sides knew the fundamental truth. The war was over. Humanity had won, not through superior numbers or technology, but through superior will. They had refused to break, refused to surrender, refused to accept that might made right. The Valdrine Empire had ruled the galaxy through fear for 3,000 years. Humanity had shown that fear was not the strongest force in the universe. Hope was, the hope that things could be better, that enemies could become allies, that war could lead to peace. Commander Hyunwoo stood on the observation deck of Valdrine Prime's defense station. He watched the human fleet in orbit and thought about everything that had happened. 2 years ago, he had thought humans were primitive and weak. Now he knew better. Humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they were strong, but because they never gave up. Because they learned from every mistake. Because they could hate you today and forgive you tomorrow. Because they fought not just to win, but to build something better after winning. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of conquest was over. The age of cooperation was beginning. And humanity, the species that refused to be conquered, would show everyone what came next. The Treaty of Sol was signed on a neutral station orbiting Jupiter. Admiral Tajin held the pen with a hand that shook slightly. Beside him, Admiral Seojin waited patiently. This was the moment that would define the next 1,000 years of galactic history. The terms were unlike any surrender treaty the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity did not demand tribute. They did not take territory. They did not enslave the defeated. Instead, they demanded something far more radical. The Valdrine Empire must dissolve. In its place, a democratic federation would form. Every conquered species would gain autonomy and representation. Tajin had argued it was impossible. The Valdrine culture was built on hierarchy and strength. How could they transform into something they had never been? Seojin's answer was simple. Change or become irrelevant. Humanity would help, but only if the Valdrine chose to change themselves. The signature was made. The war officially ended. After 2 years of the bloodiest conflict the galaxy had ever seen, peace arrived, not with celebration, but with exhaustion. Both sides had lost too much to celebrate. They could only look forward and hope the future would be better than the past. Commander Hyunwoo was assigned as military liaison to the transition government. His first meeting was with General Sora, the human who had defended Tokyo against 6 Valdrine assaults. They sat across from each other in a conference room, 2 warriors who had tried to kill each other. Now they had to work together. The silence was awkward at first. Then Sora asked a simple question. How many soldiers did you lose at Tokyo? Hyunwoo told her, 3,000. She nodded slowly. I lost 8,000. They sat in that shared understanding. Both had paid in blood. Both had done their duty. Now both had to find a new purpose. They began discussing how to merge Valdrine and human military doctrine, how to create joint peacekeeping forces, how to defend the new Federation from external threats. It was difficult work. They argued often, but they respected each other. That respect made cooperation possible. Captain Jiwon left military service to become a historian. She wrote a book called The Human Paradox. It became the most read text in the former Valdrine Empire. In it, she analyzed what made humanity so dangerous. Not their technology, not their weapons, but their fundamental belief that different peoples with different ideas could work together. The Valdrine had believed in one truth: strength conquers all. Humans had proven there were other truths. Cooperation multiplies strength. Diversity creates resilience. Forgiveness builds futures. These concepts were alien to Valdrine thinking, but they worked. Earth was proof. Research Director Yuna established the first joint human-Valdrine research facility. Scientists from both species worked together on projects neither could complete alone. Valdrine engineering precision combined with human creative problem-solving. The results were remarkable. Within 5 years, they developed medical technology that extended lifespans for both species, energy systems that were clean and efficient, agricultural methods that could feed billions. The technology that had been used to kill was now being used to save lives. Lieutenant Nari became humanity's ambassador to the 847 worlds once conquered by the Valdrine. She traveled from system to system, explaining what happened, how a single planet defeated a galactic empire, how the defeated empire was transforming into something better. She told them humanity did not win through superior strength. They won through superior adaptability, through their refusal to accept that might made right, through their belief that peace was worth fighting for. The message resonated. Species that had been enslaved for generations began demanding self-determination. The old order of conquest and subjugation crumbled. It was replaced by something messy and chaotic. Democracy was loud and argumentative. Former slaves and former masters had to learn to negotiate instead of command. It was uncomfortable for everyone. But it was better than war. Commander Kang Yun became the first Valdrine officer commissioned in the United Earth Space Force. He wore a uniform that combined elements of both cultures. His crew was mixed: humans, Valdrine, and members of 6 other species. They trained together, fought together, trusted each other. When pirates attacked a convoy in the outer systems, Kang Yun's ship responded. The pirates expected an easy target. They found a crew that fought with Valdrine ferocity and human tactics. The pirates were captured, not killed. They were given trials, not executions. They were offered rehabilitation, not slavery. It was the new way. Justice without cruelty. 20 years after the war ended, Earth hosted the first Galactic Congress. Representatives from 800 species gathered in Geneva. The city had been rebuilt after being damaged in the war. Now, it was the diplomatic center of the galaxy. Admiral Taejin attended as a retired observer. He was old now, his armored skin showing age spots. He watched the proceedings from the gallery. Beside him sat Admiral Seojin, equally aged. They had become unlikely friends over the years. 2 warriors who learned that making peace was harder than making war. The Congress was chaotic. 800 species arguing about trade policy, territorial disputes, and resource allocation. No one agreed on anything. Votes were close. Debates were heated. It looked like disaster, but Taejin saw what it really was: progress. These species were arguing instead of fighting, words instead of weapons. It was messy, but it worked. "You destroyed everything we built," Taejin said quietly. Seojin nodded. "We rebuilt something better. Together." Taejin could not argue with that. The new federation was loud, disorganized, and frustrating, but it was also free, fair, and at peace. That was worth more than 1,000 conquered worlds. General Sora retired from military service and became a teacher. She taught military history at the Joint Academy where human and Valdrine officers trained together. Her most popular lecture was about the Earth-Valdrine War. She taught both sides. The mistakes made, the lessons learned, the cost paid. Her students were the first generation who never knew the war. They studied it as history. They could not imagine a time when their species tried to exterminate each other. To them, cooperation was normal. Partnership was expected. The old hatreds made no sense. That, Sora told them, is how you know we won. Not because we defeated them, but because you cannot imagine hating them. That is the victory that matters. Research Director Yuna received the Federation Medal of Science for her contributions to post-war reconstruction. At the ceremony, she gave a speech about the importance of turning swords into plowshares, about using knowledge to build instead of destroy, about how science belonged to no single species but to all thinking beings. Her speech was translated into 800 languages and broadcast across the galaxy. It inspired a generation of young scientists from all species to pursue careers in research, to solve problems through discovery instead of conquest, to build a future where technology served life instead of ending it. 50 years after the war, the Sol system had become the cultural and diplomatic center of the galaxy. Not through conquest, but through invitation. Species came to Earth to trade, to learn, to negotiate. The human homeworld that had once been threatened with extinction was now the place where the galaxy came together. Officer Yunji, granddaughter of the colonel who fought in the war's early days, graduated from the Federation Military Academy. Her class photo showed the diversity of the new galaxy: humans, Valdrine, and 30 other species. They were the future, the ones who would protect the peace their ancestors had built. The Valdrine Federation was now Earth's closest ally. Their fleets patrolled together. Their scientists collaborated. Their young people attended universities on each other's worlds. The species that had tried to annihilate each other were now partners. Not because they forgot the past, but because they chose a better future. Commander Hyunwoo retired at age 90. He spent his final years writing his memoirs. The book was titled What I Learned from Losing. In it, he described how defeat had taught him more than victory ever did, how losing to humanity saved his species from becoming irrelevant, how the humans had shown that true strength was not in conquest but in cooperation. His book became required reading at military academies across the Federation. Young officers learned that the greatest battles were not always won with weapons, that the strongest enemies could become the best allies, that pride could destroy empires, but humility could build civilizations. Admiral Taejin died peacefully at age 103. His funeral was attended by representatives from every species in the Federation. Admiral Seojin gave the eulogy. He spoke about a warrior who learned to become a peacemaker, an enemy who became a friend, a conqueror who became a builder. The Valdrine honored Taejin as the admiral who saved their species by accepting defeat. The humans honored him as the leader who chose peace over pride. His legacy was not conquest but transformation. He had led his people from empire to federation, from domination to cooperation, from war to peace. 100 years after first contact, the Federation faced its first external threat. An aggressive empire from beyond known space attacked border systems. The Federation Council met to coordinate a response. Human, Valdrine, and 600 other species working together. The invasion was repelled not through superior force, but through superior cooperation.